Auto App. It's a one-stop app that takes care of all your car needs. You just download the app, pick a service you want, and it's done. Don't just fix it, Auto App it.
Can I swear?
Can do whatever you want. I don't care. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll just introduce us in. Welcome, folks, to another episode of podcast. Today I have a very special guest. His name is Liao Julian. He is what I consider one of the pioneers of the motoring journalist scene. He was certainly here before I got into the scene. So, and I've been here about 21, 22 years already.
Whoa, okay.
So, so it's I consider a very special privilege to be able to speak with, someone who has been around longer than I have, and possibly at the beginning of where motoring journalism or automotive journalism is today. So, without further ado, this is Liao Julian.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sheldon.
Yeah.
You know what? We should clarify something, though.
Okay.
Like, when you talk about the godfathers of our business, car reviews in Singapore, I think you have to talk about people like Dr. Winston Lee,
That's right.
maybe Andre Lam.
Yep.
Now those guys, I would call them veterans.
Yep.
Just to annoy them, but Dr. Lee is in his 70s now, and I think he was really the godfather of this. I think he was the first person in Singapore to actually write about cars.
Yeah. I think I got to get him on the show.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
He must have some really great stories, I think.
I'm sure.
And then people like Andre,
Yeah.
like he founded, I think, Torque magazine.
That was the start, right, of
Right.
motoring journalism.
Yeah.
Those
So
guys,
I really looked up to those guys, and I used to cut out Dr. Lee's, because he used to review cars for the Straits Times, right?
Yeah.
So in the Sunday Times, I used to cut out his reviews and make my own little sort of poor man's car magazine.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so those guys, I think, are sort of the granddaddies of our business.
Okay. So we'll go back to the origin story of where your career started. And how did it all start for you?
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but there was a magazine called Highway.
Okay.
The Highway.
That's right.
And that was the Automobile Association of Singapore's in-house magazine. So it used to go out to all the members.
That's right.
I think it was quarterly or twice a month, something like that. I think twice a month
Once every 2 months.
yeah.
Twice a month before.
So, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, once every 2 months. The caffeine has yet to kick in.
Okay.
So I had a bit of time. I was waiting to get into university, I think, and so I wrote in and said, "Look, could you use some help around the office?" And putting my hand up here, I wrote a letter to the publisher, and they said no. And then I called them and said, I'll do it for free.
Okay.
And I said, "Welcome aboard. When can you start?" And that is literally how it started. And I actually spent the first, I'd say, a couple of months, like not really doing much. I was sort of helping to edit stories. I had to clean the air cons. I had to make coffee for everyone, that kind of stuff. The intern stuff.
Wait, who was the publisher at this point?
It was Magnum Publishing.
Magnum Publishing.
Yeah, do you remember Jennifer Shun? She's a huge golfing maven, and it was a contract title, right?
That's
so
right.
the AAS, for everyone else listening, sometimes organizations pay small publishing firms like ours,
Contract publishing?
to publish for them. So she had a resident car review, and as luck would have it, this is John Lim Ka-Bing. He was moving to Australia, so he's like, "Okay, I'll show you what to do, kid." And, then I'm off to Australia. So he kind of taught me how to, go about writing a car review. And he taught me how to heel and tow and all that kind of cool stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
A hell of a driver, actually. So he moved to Australia, and I kind of picked up where he left off. And that was it, I think someone at the Straits Times saw my work, had no idea, obviously, I was just some goofy kid, right?
Okay.
But he liked what he read, and I think he said, "Why don't you come in and interview?" will give you a column in the Straits Times, and that's really how it started. So just a combination of luck and willingness to work for free.
Wow.
At least for a start, yeah.
Correct. So yeah, in a lot of areas in journalism and showbiz and all that, I think work for free are the magic words to open doors for you, right?
Pretty much, yeah. And I don't know if it's changed now,
No,
but
it hasn't.
okay.
Just ask my intern.
Yeah, exposure. You can learn on the job.
Yeah.
The thing is, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. As long as you do get the chance to learn something and not just exploit it, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And if you do try to work hard and make the most of that opportunity, it can lead places.
That's right. Because whatever it is, you are investing in yourself. So even if you're not getting paid for it, you have this opportunity to prove yourself.
Yeah.
And then of course after a while, if your boss or employer still takes you for granted, then you have this body of work to bring to the next guy, and hopefully someone else will appreciate your work more than you, and
Absolutely.
then it might lead on to bigger and better things.
Plus, I learned how to make coffee, so
Okay. There's always that to fall
Lifelong
back on.
skill.
Right?
Yeah,
Starbucks is always there. Right?
exactly. Plus, every journalist needs how many of your stories have been written by coffee, right?
That's right. I practically got a caffeine drip sometimes, IV. Yeah.
Exactly.
More efficient that way. Yeah. So, okay. So the first time that I came across your name was on a magazine, Car Singapore.
Oh, yeah.
And that was around for like, what?
Oh, I don't know how long it was around for. I think they launched it in 98.
Okay.
Was it? No, so this is the UK titled Car magazine. This was the Singapore licensed version of it.
That's right.
I don't really know how that started, because I think by then I had been writing for the papers for a while.
Okay.
I was still in university, and writing about cars was my way of paying my way through school.
Oh.
So I think when they set up shop, they were of course in search of cheap labor.
All right.
And I think we got in touch, and I think Car was just a good chance for me to learn a little bit more about how the British do it, and how to make it just a beautiful magazine, and how to put one together.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, Car UK, basically, that was my introduction to this world and later on a career. And everything I did, basically, I wanted to emulate what they did in terms of
absolutely.
the production value, the writing style, and
me too.
and everything. Yeah.
I don't know about you. I used to worship those guys,
Exactly.
And I think they used to worship themselves a bit too, but but yeah, you're right. I wanted to be those guys, just be the tastemaker in terms of what cars people should be driving, and just be so well informed and be able to tell everyone else about cars. I think those magazines were.
And what really drew me in was the way that they would describe the cars and write about it.
Yeah.
There would probably be like one photo taken in black and white or something like that, especially in the column, right?
Yeah.
But they would kind of write about it in such a eloquent and beautiful way that you practically knew how it felt they could communicate how it felt to drive. And that has been sort of the thing that guided my writing style.
I mean, we worked together as well. And that's something that I think was really the case for your writing as well. You didn't just, how the American magazines can sometimes be all about specs or about technical details, but your stuff is not like that. It's very much British influenced, if I may say.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's all I had access to in terms of reading. I didn't have a lot of storybooks around the house, but I had a lot of car magazines around the house. So out of boredom, no internet those days, only 4 channels on TV and
exactly.
that kind of thing. So obviously, there's only so many things you can do to keep yourself occupied. And for me, most of that was just reading on car magazine, developing this lifetime of car knowledge.
Absolutely.
So fast forward to, later on today, that seems to be massively lacking. And what I always kind of fought against was the car reviews tend to be a bit samey in that they're all about spitting out the facts and the figures and the horsepower and stuff that anybody can find out from any website, press kit. You go to the brochure, you can get those numbers for yourself, but they don't tell you how it feels like to drive, what to look out for and stuff like that. And I feel that there's been a less of a, nobody wants to read as much as they used to now. It's all about videos, sound bites.
That's right. I think you're right, actually. And actually, if you, I just did this because, I think you and I, we're kind of at that age where we look at some of the cars in the 80s and 90s and you think, well, I might like to own one of those one day. And then, so I've been reading these really old car reviews. So some of the magazines do put them up on the web.
Yep.
And they're actually unreadable to me now.
Really?
Yeah, they're so pompous.
Oh, okay.
And, they're so plodding, and they are actually, they take themselves really seriously, but they're also very generous with space. So you could have a car review that's like 4 to 6 pages, right?
Yeah,
Whereas nowadays it's a lot more. You get to the point right away.
That's right. Okay.
So, it may have swung a little bit too far towards just the facts, ma'am, like you say. But really, if you go back to the sort of late 80s, early 90s and look at a car magazine back then,
Okay.
some of it is really tough to get through.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
You find
really
it?
have to say.
I think even the ad copies also. You see the old magazines and there's like paragraphs.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh,
It's
and
like-
it's an ad,
Yeah, you see one picture of the car that's like 1/3 of the page.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really changed. You're right. People's attention spans are a lot shorter, of course.
Yeah.
That's kind of part of the challenge of, I think, doing this, right? I mean, when I started and I was freelancing for the Straits Times,
Yeah.
I actually submitted my stories by fax machine.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't have an email account. And I had to type them out, sometimes, print them out and then fax them over.
That was the way they did it, right?
Exactly. And the paper had a typing pool to convert my stuff into whatever system that you saw. I was like,
So you could handwrite your
you totally
your
could.
reviews,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
As long as the typist could understand what you're writing.
Yeah. So, can you imagine that? I mean, now it's completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's evolved. I mean, the cars themselves have evolved too, of course, but I think the storytelling's evolved as well.
Okay.
And definitely something's been lost. But, there's been some gains as well, I think. That would be the way I choose to look at it anyway.
Where are the gains you
Yeah. So, I think that right now we have a chance to do things a lot more visually. You can actually do a lot more with a quick video than you can with 1,000 words.
Okay.
So there's certain things that actually do work better, I think, like a little clip on Instagram or something.
Okay.
And I think that the immediacy of course, this is a double-edged sword because everyone's, trying to get the stuff out faster, right? Back in the day, we would drive a car and then think about
Sit
it
on
for
it for
2
weeks.
weeks. And then, crap, the deadline's tomorrow. But now it's like pretty much you have to, bash it out on the spot. I mean, that's got its own challenges as well, of course. But, I think the readers actually, in some ways, they're better served because they have more access to more information than before. And I think if they choose to kind of consume bad information, then it's their own fault, really.
So there's this sort of, especially I think in the local context, there's a common criticism of a lack of integrity in writing styles. They said that motoring journalists are bribed and
we are, but
that sort of thing, right? So I find that back in the old days, then they talk about, they send you on these fantastic trips, fly you on business class and all that. And of course, there's an implication there of like, okay, now we've given you a wined and dined you and given you a nice trip. So you kind of feel a little bit that your hand is a bit forced to say nice things about the car.
Yeah.
But what would happen I think back in the days where you had that luxury of waiting a few days or a week or waiting till you get back and then you start to write about it, it kind of lets that fizz of the trip and the holidays and all that kind of fizzle out a bit, and then you kind of, it settles down, and then you can sort of write more objectively about the cars, right? Whereas now you need to come out with a story. You drive it today, by tomorrow, you want the story out there. So you're writing in this 6-star resort somewhere in Mallorca and being served, your cappuccino as you're writing, and practically, short of getting a foot massage and the guy fanning you with the palm fronds, and that would sort of influence the decision a little bit. You feel behooved to write something, say something nice, even if you didn't like the car, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's human nature. And, you have to think about what you would do if you were on the other side of the fence, right? Mm-hmm. You would totally ply these guys with wine, fine food, and you fly in business class and that kind of thing. It kind of makes sense. Everyone's kind of acting out of their own self-interests, right? And I think it's up to the journalists to try their best to win the trust of their readers. So sooner or later it's going to catch up with you. I think if every car gets like a 5-star review from you, right? Yeah. Especially these days, when your work is not only more visible because everything's online, but it's also up there for posterity. So it's very hard to forget something that you wrote.
Okay.
Back in the day when it was just offline, if you wrote something that was a bit stupid, okay, after 5 months, no one would remember.
Yeah.
It'd be someone's closet or someone's storeroom somewhere.
Yeah.
But now it's up there for posterity. So you really have to think, I think, carefully about what you say. The other thing is, I think, for me anyway, I think the technology has moved on so that it's actually quite hard to find a really crappy car.
Correct.
And I think the challenge for us is actually, it's hard to find a bad car, but that doesn't mean that people can't make bad choices. So what I like to do is I like to point out, of course, a car's flaws and its pluses as well. But I like to try and think about who the car is aimed at and what it's supposed to do and whether it does it. So it's not so much about whether it's a bad car, like it's about whether it's the right car for you. Like I used to criticize a lot of Japanese cars for being like kind of soulless to drive back in the day. Yeah. And I thought, actually, that doesn't make a lot of sense. That's like criticizing a Ferrari for having like a small boot or not being able to carry 5 people. I I think there's a bit of nuance there in what we do. We have to kind of think about whether a car is not just good or bad, but whether it's fit for purpose.
Look at it in the context of what it's made for.
Yeah.
And then see if it does what it says on the tin.
Yeah, exactly, right? So does it really matter that, like, I don't know, an S-Class is not as sharp to drive as, let's say, a 7 Series, I don't know if it does matter, actually. Especially, and, I've actually had this debate with a Mercedes engineer. This was on the launch of the W211, so great-great-grandfather of the current E-Class, right?
Yeah.
And he said, you know what? We can make our cars drive like a BMW,
Okay, sure.
We totally know how to do it. We're engineers.
Okay.
But that's not what our customers want.
They want it to feel like a Mercedes.
Exactly, right? So they wanted the sort of slightly soft throttle response. They wanted the light controls or whatever it was, So I thought, okay, that kind of makes sense, right? Right. And then everything we see in the car kind of is there for a reason, right?
Do you find that's something that's sort of going away or dying slowly? Like it used to be, a Mercedes felt like a Mercedes, no matter which Mercedes you got in. Yeah. And just by the feel of how the steering felt and the ride and everything.
Even the sound.
The smell, right? Maybe even the, right? And then BMWs would feel like BMWs. There's a distinct feeling. But now, not so much, I find. Right?
I think there was a stage when, and this is probably our fault, our industry, right? Okay. The car critic industry, car journalism industry, whatever you want to call it. I think there was a time where every car maker wanted to be a bit more like BMW. So they made their cars a bit sportier. They made their cars a bit more, I would say, sacrificed a bit of comfort sometimes. And you're right, there was kind of push towards a certain homogeneity. But I think it's kind of opening out again. And I think that a lot of this is kind of market forces, right? So when you have times of austerity and everyone has to try and save money at the factory level, they share components within their product lineups and they share platforms and all that. And so everything starts to feel a bit samey. Yeah. But now I think we're at a different kind of era where, of course, electric cars are coming and all that. So I think the technology is starting to broaden out a bit again. And you've got all these approaches. Like if you look at Mercedes, right? There's the S-Class and then there's the EQS, which is not an S-Class with the engine taken out and a motor put in. No. It's a different platform altogether. And then I've just driven the new 7 Series with the i7 back-to-back. And that is a kind of same platform with the motor taken out, the engine taken out and the motor put in. So everyone's got this different approach now. And that's, to me, is quite interesting to see.
Okay, so EQS versus i7, for example. Yeah. How do they differ?
Yeah, they're such different animals, I gotta say.
Oh, yeah?
Okay, the EQS is kind of nice to drive and it's super quiet, it's long range and it's teardrop shaped and everything. The i7 is all about like showing your neighbors how much money you have, right? It's all about bling. You've got all these features and you've got that giant grill, like look how big the grill is. You could cook a baby elephant if it were an actual grill, right? Yeah. And it's about opulence and all that. So actually, it's a much more electric limousine. There's a lot of space in the back and all that. The EQS actually doesn't have that much space in the back, and it's actually quite toned down in terms of the interior. So it looks like that one's like maximum efficiency and sort of a more classical approach to beauty, whereas the i7 is all about ostentation, which to me, 7 Series was never really about ostentation in the past.
Right.
It was a bit more
flagship, right?
Yeah, they used to be proud of how understated their flagship was and all that. These days it's different, and of course the customers have changed as well. 7 Series customer in China, apparently, average age 38 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, so not so understated, not so afraid of showing off bling, stuff like that. So,
Is that really the case though? That 38-year-old, or is that just like kind of image that car companies would like to? We would like us to think that the customers are all these .com billionaires, and it's sexier to think of that way, right?
So this came up on a slide at the launch, like the average age in Europe and America and all that. So they were actually a lot older. In apparently in China, not Asia but China, 38 years old, and I was like, holy cow!
I'll give you an example. Not that long ago, but years ago, we drove VW launched the Arteon, which is today still their flagship, right?
Right.
So when the car came to Singapore, they made a thing of they said, okay, we're gonna do a handover ceremony of our first Arteon customers, and these are the guys, and they built a stage and had a dinner at the showroom, and they still it felt like your graduation, like they're giving MD, shakes your hand and gives the customer the key and all that. But one thing so I went for the launch about a month before in Germany, and then it was all this sort of the profile, or in the brochures or in the press kit, the images of these guys in turtleneck sweaters, and they were maybe in their mid-30s or early 40s. They look successful, but still led a sporty and young life and that kind of thing. And then when we met the owners in Singapore, right? They're all silver hair.
Yeah, they make us look young, right?
They're all, they're all like, they're around the age where they were paying for their Arteons, their CPF funds and stuff like that. So what the car company kind of wants you to associate this image, which was very different from the guys who actually bought the thing.
Yeah.
And probably if you were, say, in your 50s or 60s and were buying a 7 Series, and then you'd probably feel good thinking like, actually, these your peers who are buying their cars, they're actually younger, and so they want to make you feel 20 years younger than what you are. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I totally get it, and I think that our market is probably the one that's a bit of an outlier. I mean, our cars are expensive, right?
That's true.
Like an Arteon is probably 45,000 euros in Germany. I don't know. I'm just pulling the number out of my bottom, but here it's 220, 230 now.
That's right.
And I think to be able to drop that kind of money on a car,
you need to be
like, you need to have a bit of savings, I think. So, there's that distortion. And, look at Mini, for example, right? Who's buying Minis? Okay, there's some young people buying them, but there's a lot of people who have them for a second car and, have them as toys. And I think they are, let's call them the young at heart.
Dual income, no kids.
Maybe, But, I think there are a lot of people who
confirmed bachelors, that kind of people,
But I think, we are really the outlier. So, but you're right. I think, that's the other thing about writing about cars for Singapore, right? There's certain things that the manufacturers kind of expect for their cars that just don't apply here. And I think that a lot of the retailers here, they get a lot of grief, like in terms of how they're retailing the cars. You're marketing it wrong. You're aiming it at the wrong people. I hear this all the time from the marketing guys who tell me, the factory says we're doing this all wrong, and they don't understand. Our car is like $800,000 here. It's like 200,000 euro, but here it's 800. Pay a bit more and get a Bentley instead of this maybe an M760 or something. So I don't think it's us who doesn't get it. You're right. Sometimes the factories do have their blind spots as well.
Okay. So what do you basically, what is the local customer who's shopping for a car? I mean, that's basically who we are writing to, and we hope that reads the magazines and then or reads our articles and then makes a decision after that and to what to buy. So for the cynical Singaporean buyer who think, is there what would you tell them in order to understand what it is we do, and should they lose faith in the local media?
Well, I think there are a lot of people who make car buying decisions emotionally rather than sort of logically. And I think that's understandable because the cars here are so expensive, right? It no longer, in some ways, doesn't make sense to spend all that money on a car.
You throw logic out the window.
Yeah.
Because,
So what's left, right? You must be acting out of emotion, and I think you see that a lot, right? You see a lot of people who kind of stretch to brands that are kind of prestige brands. They get less car as a result, but they feel better about the purchase.
That's right.
Yeah. So it would be like you and I, we love the Kia Stinger, right? I don't know about you, I love that car.
Yeah.
It's a great car to drive. It's got a lot of features.
Yes.
It's comfortable. It
That's
looks
right.
great. And for that money, someone would say, but I could have an Audi A4 or something, right?
That's right.
You could buy a car with less power, less space, fewer features.
Not as good to drive.
Not as good to drive or whatever.
That's right.
But somehow it's better value for money because it's got an Audi badge. So, there's always going to be, actually, I was going to say there's always going to be buyers like that, but I think that's the majority.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Singaporeans who, want their car to say something about them.
That's right.
And we're no different. Like but you and I, we enjoy driving, right? So we would drive the Kia because we think that's what it says about us. We have taste and we like driving. We wish we lived next to the Nürburgring.
I'd
that
say
kind of
it's
stuff.
a cut price Panamera.
Yeah, exactly.
When I sat in the car,
Yeah.
and the steering wheel, how it was positioned, the seating position, looking around, I said, what? This feels familiar. What else did I drive that feels like this?
Right.
I thought about it, and then I realized, it's a Panamera. It's a Porsche Panamera.
I get that actually.
Right?
I think about it now. It's like, it's
and this is what 1/3 the price of an entry Panamera.
yeah, absolutely,
Right?
and not that far behind on performance. Not 1/3 the
Not if you get the
performance
V6.
anyway. Yeah. So that's what it would say about us if we drove a Stinger. But I think someone else would want maybe driving a C-Class or maybe even an Audi A3. Much less car. But he would want that car to say something about him.
That's right.
And I think that is what that's probably the primary thing that guides a lot of car buying in Singapore. What does the car say about me? We all have a certain vision of ourselves. We have an image of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And we try to externalize it in certain ways, with the way we dress, what watch we have, and all that. And I think car is a big thing there. And so I don't know about you. People are always asking you, what do you think about this car, right?
Yeah. I've been burnt many a time. I've been too honest.
Right. Yeah.
So now I temper it with, before I answer the question, because wait, have you bought the car?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's totally like, so what do you think of this car? It's crap. There's no power. Blah blah blah.
So,
My dad just bought one.
Yeah.
So now I asked him, like, so why do you ask? Oh yeah, my dad just bought one. I'm like, oh yeah, great car, great choice.
But that's sort of putting you on the spot. I mean, quite often, sometimes I'd get ambushed at the men's room or something.
Hey, it happens to the best of us, right?
But I guess it's nice to know that your opinion is counts for something. But at the same time, I think they want to just validate their decision. They want to reinforce
absolutely.
that.
Yeah. So, it's important to filter that, right? And, of course, there are strengths and weaknesses for each car. There are some people, of course, who haven't really made their decision yet. And I think those are the people where, you probably spend a bit more time talking things through with them, trying to get out what a sense of what they really need. And, then that's where your skill as a car reviewer comes in, right? You wouldn't recommend a car that you like necessarily, but you kind of know that, okay, this guy really needs, something that doesn't use a lot of fuel, or it's got, 7 airbags or whatever. Then, okay, maybe this car.
Okay. So let's say as a percentage, right? How many % of the cars you have reviewed would you say turn out to be bad reviews, or cars you don't like?
Oh man, these days not that many. I got to be honest with you. There is one brand that stopped talking to me altogether.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
they were not happy with one of the reviews I gave, and
What country were they from?
it's kind of childish.
China. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Say no more.
Yeah, so I have to say though, I drove one of their cars, and it had the misfortune of following the Porsche Macan, which is such a great car to drive,
Sure.
right? Yeah, and I thought I jumped into this other SUV, and I thought, whoa, where's the steering feel? And all that sort of stuff. And And it wasn't a bad car, but I thought it was a bit of a bad deal. It was expensive for what it was. And that's the thing, a lot of people who drive or who sell cars, they've many of them are barely familiar with their own product, but some of them know it pretty well.
Yeah.
But of course, they don't really get to play with the other brands' cars. So they kind of look at their products in isolation. So they think you're talking crap, right? When you say, this is not good here or whatever it is, or you could spend your money better elsewhere. They're just talking out of your hat, talking through your hat. But, that's the thing, we kind of have the chance to play with a lot more cars and drive a lot more cars. So, we have a sense of what's out there. And I think it's difficult for people who work in car companies to understand that. Having said that, I'm always mindful of a couple of things when I review a car. There's the readers, right, who are kind of relying on us to help them spend a lot of money wisely. Right. So that's that. But, at every car dealership, there's people who work there.
Yeah.
There's hundreds of people who work there to feed their families and stuff. So we don't take that lightly either, right? You don't demonize a car just 'cause you woke up, on the wrong side of bed that day or whatever it is. You have to think really carefully about what its strengths and weaknesses are. And, I think that sometimes, it's a fine line to walk. But I think sometimes, you kind of cross the line and then you end up being on the blacklist and, it is what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I find in my early days when I was starting out, my criticisms were not as well taken as they are now.
Okay.
For some reason. So I think some age or experience.
Seniority, let's call it that.
Or maybe I've learned to kind of write about things more objectively. If
Okay.
there's something I don't like, I'll put it in a context of value or against its competitors. It doesn't do this as well. Or, that sort of thing. So maybe I figured out that art. But I remember I've been had a good talking to by a couple of older marketing managers.
Time to name names then. Like, what car is this?
I don't know. Yeah, actually, if I'm not mistaken, one of the guys I remember, I don't think he's alive now anymore. I think he passed away, but I could be wrong. He might still be around.
Okay, well.
Yeah. But I just said this thing has the plastics in this car feel quite cheap,
Right, yeah.
Which they did,
Yeah.
But then, I said, how can you say that the plastics feel cheap? I said, well, they kind of do compared to, if you went into the next car and then
So was his argument that they don't feel cheap or that you said it?
That I don't know. I guess they're insulted, but again, later on, I feel like okay, maybe if my words didn't hold as much water, he wouldn't be upset about it. So
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those guys do get annoyed because they take it. Then I've seen them take it pretty personally, right?
Right.
And it's like just an objective thing, right? The plastics are either cheap or they're not, right?
Yeah.
But they take it personally. So I don't know what to tell guys like that. I mean,
I say, depends who you are reaching out to.
yeah,
Right?
I do feel a bit sorry for them sometimes because they're stuck with whatever they have to sell, right?
That's right.
It's not like you have a restaurant and, a critic says, you put too much salt in that and then you can adjust, right?
Yeah.
But with these guys, it's a bit different.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's just part of the game, really.
So now every time I go for a car launch, I see new faces all the time, and the faces that I used to know get less and less frequent, or I don't run into them so much, right? But how would you say the style of reporting or journalism has changed? You think are the new generation getting better at what they do, or not as good?
I think there's some of the younger people out there who are actually really good storytellers. And they can do things that, I just kind of struggle with, to be honest. Like, I'm talking about things like TikTok or Instagram Reels or something. I've seen them go to a car launch and they whip up their phone and they're holding it vertically, right? Which apparently is what you do.
Yeah.
You and I hold it horizontally.
I know.
And apparently there's a fault line in terms of age
so,
there.
so if I hold it to the side, then I'm showing my age.
You're showing your age there, yeah. So they're just so good at doing that. They can whip it out and then they kind of turn on that Instagram persona and say, hey guys, I'm at the launch of this and check this out. They're actually very good at telling that story that way and connecting with people. But in terms of getting people to have a deeper understanding of the cars, that I'm not so sure about. You know, you and I probably come from a different era when cars were a bit simpler and more mechanical. So I used to do my own servicing for, you know, a little bit, like my own oil changes and stuff like that. Like, you know, I've had motorcycles, right? And they're really old and they're always breaking down. So I've changed like fuel pumps and that kind of stuff.
Right.
I don't know if the younger guys are fully aware of like what happens when you press that start button and how everything works and everything. But, you know, do you need that to tell a story these days? I don't know.
I mean, to me, I would sort of read an article or take this person's advice seriously if I know that they are speaking from experience or knowledge of the cars and stuff like that. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, the car companies here, or any car company wants to sell their cars.
Yeah.
And as a consumer, before I make a purchase decision, I want to read this thing. But then I have to read about the guy telling me if this product is good or worth buying. I want to know what sort of experience he's talking about.
Yeah.
So if it's one of these guys doing a TikTok video and stuff like that, I don't know how much do you know about the car to tell me, and does it make me want to buy the car? So I struggle with that sort of decision, whereas I feel there's a sense of professional obligation for me to tell the owner, you know, do they get calls from their friends or family and asking for car advice or say, hey, I'm thinking about buying this thing. What do you think? You know, I couldn't tell you how many cars I have sort of put on the road, you know, so to speak.
Yeah.
From friends and family asking me. So these guys with the smartphones and then they're putting it on TikTok and stuff like that. Yeah. Do they get that kind of calls from their friends and family?
Yeah, it's a valid question. It really is. And, you know, I think that, you know, like you say, every family or every pool of friends has that one car guy.
The car guru, right?
The car guru, yeah.
That's right.
And I like to think that if you read car magazines, you read car websites and choose the good ones to read, you will be better informed than someone who only gets their news from TikTok maybe or Instagram. I think there's a place for both, honestly. Like, you know, I asked myself, if I had a restaurant and I was just launching it, would I get the newspaper guy to come review the restaurant? I totally would, you know, and if I had to invest in some advertising in let's say a gourmet magazine or something, if there was one in Singapore, I would totally do that. At the same time, I would also try to get the Instagrammers and the food bloggers to come in and try the stuff.
Because not everyone is interested in reading that whole nuanced review, right?
Yeah. And some, you know, and of course not every reader is the same, right? Some have just a superficial interest in cars. Some have very deep interest in cars. And you can actually serve both, I feel, you know. So you can give them the information that they're looking for either way. And you know.
So they do have their purpose, right?
I think so. And, you know, we've had to change as well, right? Like, so, you know, you've been in videos on YouTube and stuff, like, you're doing a podcast now. And, you know, what you do on video, I'm sure it's completely different from how you would write a car review, right? You know, you have to kind of crystallize things. You have to kind of simplify for video. You have to show rather than describe, you know, that sort of stuff. So, you know, we kind of have had to evolve, I think, with kind of the evolving way that people are getting information these days. It's not unique to us, though. I think, you know, if you were, I don't know, you covering food or whatever, it was stereos or whatever it is.
I get the food part of it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I don't read a lot of restaurant reviews and I like to taste it for myself.
Right.
But I guess if I do see flashy Instagram kind of things, say, oh, this is what the restaurant looks like, or this is their speciality and dessert is on fire, or whatever it is, right? Then I might think of, okay, next time I want to have somebody to bring my wife out. You know, I'll try to remember this place. Right?
So the awareness part is different actually from the deep knowledge part, right? So so I think all this TikTok and Instagram stuff is really great for awareness.
Driving awareness.
Yeah, that's right. But in terms of making an informed decision, I think that's where like a website like my old website, carbuyer.com.sg, that's where we try and fill in the blanks that that might exist for someone who's making a car buying decision. I mean, you used to work at Car Buyer as well.
Yep.
We never tried to put a car on a pedestal, right? We always put the reader on a pedestal. We always tried to put information together and curate information for a reader so that he can make a good car buying decision.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think if you were starting out today and you wanted to be an Instagrammer, you would probably prioritize putting the car on a pedestal a bit so that you would get more views and more likes, that sort of stuff.
So it's kind of the line is now getting a bit hazy, especially for someone who's not really all about cars, but this car just appears in their feed. And then there's content that's created by the car manufacturer.
Yeah.
And then there's content that's created by these Instagrammers or
Yeah.
YouTubers and stuff like that. After a while, it gets a bit hard to figure out, especially to the casual observer, where this is coming from. And it doesn't matter so much anyway,
In terms of whether they can tell where the info is coming from.
Yeah,
and
so and further to that question is eventually is motoring journalists gonna be irrelevant if manufacturers are starting to create their own content anyway?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly the case that they have the technology to bypass this now, right? And they have budgets to make their cars look great and so on. So I think, it's part of an arms race, right? So we have to kind of stay ahead of that as well. So we've got to make our content look great or whatever. But I think that the one thing we can do is to make it relatable. So the Singapore car market has so many nuances and so many distortions. How do you make sense of that? Like, you ask someone on the street, how are COE prices determined? How does it actually work? What's the Cat A COE? We take all this stuff for granted, but I bet you nobody else knows. And when it's time to buy a car, man, you really have to educate yourself in a hurry. And that's not something you're going to get from BMW's TikTok page or are there TikTok pages or TikTok accounts? Yeah.
So I don't know. It's
Yeah,
the last
that's how out of
bastion
touch
for
we are,
me.
yeah.
I've drawn the line, and I said nope. Enough social media
Right.
platforms.
Yeah.
I'm not doing TikTok.
Yeah,
I feel,
yeah.
But I feel this sort of tide pushing me, and
Yeah,
I'm standing
yeah.
at the edge of that cliff, right? And I'm like trying
Yeah.
not to
Screw
make
this,
that
right?
move,
Yeah.
But I don't know. It just kind of is enough, lah. I have trouble maintaining one social media page, and
Yeah,
it
I
doesn't
hear
come
you, man.
naturally to me.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So that's the word I was looking for. It doesn't come naturally. And some of the younger guys, it does. But really, if you're going to buy a car in Singapore, you're just going to shortchange yourself if you don't go to a good local car website, if you don't educate yourself about how things work here.
That's right.
And if you only get your news from, I don't know, Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is, I mean, go right ahead. I mean, you're going to spend your money, so good luck with that. And how many times have people come up to you and said, oh man, I bought this car, I thought it was great, but shit, it kind of sucks, blah, blah, blah.
I've never heard that, but I've heard cases of when they were happy with their decisions.
Yeah, okay.
So I had this lawyer come up to me, and I'd forgotten that we had a conversation, and then he told me, he said, 3 years ago, I asked you about this car, and you told me to get it because it would never be this price again.
Right.
And I just want to tell you that 3 years later, you're still right. It's never been
brilliant.
that.
Yeah.
I said, now I'm stuck with this shitty car, and all because of you, But it's very sort of gratifying to hear that kind of thing when you made the right calls and you made the right predictions.
Yeah, and I think that's what you and I have been trying to do for the last 20-something years, and
I just want to help people. That's why I've gotten into this business.
Right.
And I just would hate to sort of, for that buyer to sort of be driving a car they regret buying for the next 10 years because they committed themselves to a long-term loan. Sometimes it's 7, 8, or even 10 years.
Yeah.
And you have to live with that decision for that's a long time that you have to live with your decision.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So,
So basically, we're trying to save people from bad car decisions.
yeah, make the right decision.
Yeah.
That's what I've been in this business to do is to help, and also to help connect customers, bring customers to the car companies as well. Because I think there are some car brands that deserve to do better, but somehow have been overlooked for one reason or another. And so I think that's basically why I think we do what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, it's a lot of fun. Let's not bullshit everyone. It's
a lot of fun,
What
but-
is a lot of fun?
Okay, so let's be honest here. From the time that you started to the time that it is now,
Yeah.
has it gotten harder or easier to make a living doing what we do?
It's gotten a lot harder for sure. Yeah, let's ask ourselves this: if you were starting out today, what route would you take? Would
Exactly.
you join a magazine? Probably not. Would you join a
Are
newspaper?
there magazines to join?
There's still Top Gear and Car Buy, I should say. But
okay.
what would you do, right?
Yeah.
So it is harder. Maybe getting access to the cars is easier. I don't know about that. It could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of bloggers, for example, who do get to test drive the cars. There's that. Making a living out of it, though, that's rough, I think, So I think like what you're doing with Auto App, for example, trying to help out people who own cars and make life simpler. You're solving for problems.
Yep.
That'll be one way to do it, I think.
We got to do it. Quite frankly, I love writing about cars and I wish that's all I needed to do to pay the bills. But
Right.
the truth is, it's been getting harder
Yeah.
as the years. But is that, is it because we're sort of fishing from that same pond and now we need to figure out a different way, or is there the pond just shrinking basically?
Well, part of it is the pun. You're right. I used to think that. So like next year, I think car industry 2023 is going to sell maybe 28,000 cars in total, brand new, right?
Okay.
And I mean that's a small number for all those brands out there. And I think, if you and I did the exact same thing that we're doing now, but in a market like, let's say, Malaysia or Australia, where, Malaysia's like 500,000 cars a year, so you could be writing the same review. You reach so many more people. The car companies would have much more budget to kind of spend on your platform.
Right.
So a lot of it is just the pond that we're in. I think, so, I wouldn't beat myself up on whether you're doing the right thing or maybe my review's no good or whatever it is.
Yeah.
A lot of it is just, we happen to live in a society where cars are like restricted and, and then that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. But, haven't you ever had that thought like, if I were a motoring journalist in Australia, I'd be having a lot more fun, or I'd have a nice car.
I get a sense that motoring journalists everywhere kind of live this life of poverty. I don't know anyone, who's really sort of, except for the small percentage of like the Jeremy Clarksons of the world, and that kind of guys who seem to be able to, survive quite well. There's those guys, and then there's everybody else who's the gulf is huge,
I think Jeremy Clarkson, honestly, is the worst thing to happen to our industry.
Really?
Yeah, because everyone who watches your YouTube videos might say, well, you should be more like Clarkson.
Yeah. All the time. When I have friends who basically tell me, when they ask me, hey, so how's things? And then you kind of just have an honest conversation, says, it's not easy. I gotta be that way. And then the guy just goes, why don't you just do what those guys do on YouTube on Top Gear, right? The Jeremy Clarkson guy, not bad.
It's not bad.
And then I have to kind of walk them through the whole thing. It says, all right, do you know the resources they have at hand, the size of the crew, the access they have to the car?
Yeah.
Then now, and how much money it costs to pay all the camera guys and the editing and the whole lot.
Yeah.
Then at the end of the day, I tell you, we'll put it on a platform where nobody pays you for all that investment. How am I going to recoup that cost?
Exactly,
how is it going to work?
Yeah.
So then they kind of go, oh, okay.
Well, here's a bit of insider knowledge. So I used to publish Top Gear, right? And you have to get the license from the BBC to do that. And, just for fun, I thought I would ask about Top Gear TV, right? If I wanted to do Top Gear Singapore as a TV show, what would that take?
Okay.
And they were like, okay, first you have to, well, not first, but you have to submit your budget. And I think they gave a guideline. It was some 7-figure budget.
For a season.
For a season. And your first season would only be capped at so many episodes, maybe 5-6 episodes. This is a long time ago, so I forget the numbers. But it's like a couple episodes and 7-figure budget. How are you going to make that back, right?
Exactly.
Like, whoa. Okay, I'll stick to the magazine.
So, I spoke to, Top Gear Korea had launched I think that was a TV version of Top Gear, Korean TV. So I spoke to my friend who's a journalist there in South Korea. And I said, hey, not bad, you guys got a Top Gear net. He goes, do we really need to call it Top Gear though? I mean, because it's all done in their local, language, and they get cars locally and all that. And all
Yeah.
they're using is basically their name.
Right. Yeah.
You could have called it whatever Korean car show
Yeah. Yeah.
and done the same thing.
That's true.
And you don't have to pay that license just to use the
That's true, yeah.
Top Gear brand. So I think that is the challenge that a lot of car companies, a lot of countries who have these car TV shows do. And after a while, we used to license Evo
Right.
as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
and Evo Singapore. And it was after a while, it came to a point where I think the magazine makes sense because you can gain access to that UK content.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
But if you're doing a TV show,
Yeah.
how much of that can you just run from the UK? And
That's
now
true,
over
yeah.
to our colleagues in the UK,
Yeah,
and then
that's true,
they
yeah,
do the thing,
yeah.
and then you fill it in with the local TV shows.
And did you ever feel like it was a slight handicap actually to do this in English? Like if you were a Thai journalist, whatever you did would be in Thai, and they could only get it from you or your competitors, your direct competitors. But we have to compete with Australia,
English-speaking world.
America,
Yes,
the
yeah.
UK, and all that.
That's
kind of
right.
stuff.
So
I
we are
think about
held
that.
to that standard.
Right,
We are held to, so the guy who clicks on your website could
Yeah.
just as easily go to the UK website or the
Yeah.
US website, and they have that sort of access
Yeah.
to make content just look much better. I mean,
Absolutely.
just the sunlight of where they are.
That's right.
Will make your pictures look
Yeah.
50% better.
Yeah,
already.
you're right. And then
Yeah.
they've got empty roads, they've got
Yeah.
tracks, they've got cheaper cars. So,
Yeah.
let's buy a car and smash it into a wall, that kind of stuff. You
Yeah,
could
yeah.
do that in the
Yeah,
States.
yeah.
Yeah.
We drove a 911 for a month.
Yeah,
And this is what
right.
happened,
Yeah. So-
Try asking for that here now.
Yeah, that's the reaction you get, laughter.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think it's one of those things. It's one of those, I would call it a kind of a handicap. So the challenge for me, I think, just to bring it back to what we do, is just to make it relevant to the Singapore car buyer. And I think that's the way to do it. You don't want to be like the Singapore version of, say, Car Magazine UK. Or Autocar or something. You just want to help the local buyer make a good decision. And anyway, Singaporeans are champion optimizers, right? So they want to get the most for their dollar as well. So I want to know if I'm getting fog lights and that car doesn't have fog lights. I don't use fog lights, but I want them, because that car doesn't have them and mine has to have them.
Okay, so what are the must-have features in a car that basically makes or breaks the car for you now?
Hygiene factors, they call them now.
Hygiene factors.
Yeah, hygiene factor. It's kind of a hygiene factor. Like if you don't have it, then you smell bad or something. I don't know. That's the term I've heard the sales managers use. So
Really?
so nowadays it's things like connectivity, right? So you gotta have CarPlay or Android Auto, and it's better now if you don't have the wired one. It has to be wireless.
Wireless,
yeah,
right?
that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stuff.
Okay.
The latest one I'm hearing is head-up display. Like that's the new hygiene factor apparently, or it's going to become one.
Okay.
Yeah, and so things like powered seats,
Adaptive cruise.
adaptive
I get a sense
cruise.
that-
Yeah, so that's a strange one. I doubt anyone in the history of Singapore has actually used this adaptive cruise control.
Really?
I mean, I like to play with it when it comes with the test car, but the usual objections come out. Oh, it's so weird. I don't trust the car. I don't trust the technology. And the early ones were actually quite
Ropey.
yeah.
Hit and miss.
Yeah, they were a
literally.
bit jerky at best, but they actually really have gotten a lot better now. And so obviously this evolves, but I think things like powered seats, keyless entry, all that. If your car
I think
doesn't-
keyless entry is par for the course.
Yeah,
already,
yeah,
right? You
absolutely.
can't buy a car now without the keyless entry, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Even the cheapest car
Yeah.
has keyless entry.
and automated tailgate, that kind of stuff. And what's interesting is that I think that people here are very visual in terms of how they appreciate a car. So I'll give you an example. So there was an SUV from a British brand a couple of years back.
Okay.
There was a high-powered version and there was a low-powered version.
Right.
And you could have the low-powered version with a lot of body kit and like a sort of R-line stuff. And it would cost nearly as much as the high-powered version,
Okay.
which didn't really look fast but had more power. So I thought, well, okay, how does this make sense? You could have more horsepower, or you could spend the same amount, you can have less horsepower, but you can have all these body kitting, and you can have red seat belts, that kind of stuff. And the sales manager said, look, It's like this. Your friends cannot see how much horsepower you have,
Yeah.
but they can see the red seatbelt. You know, so I thought, okay, that's kind of sad, but, you know, that's how it is. You know,
Why can't you just make the higher powered one look sporty as well?
you could, but then you'd add another like 20, 30 grand to the price or whatever it is. So, you know, that's how they did it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can respect that. I mean, it's about speccing the cars the way people here want them, right? Yeah, so that's another thing. I think the whole like sheep in wolves clothing thing really works well in Singapore as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see that all the time, right? Yeah.
That's right.
So that's a hygiene factor. What else is there? I think the next frontier really is just digital stuff. Like, how many screens do you have? How big is the square footage of your
How big is your screen, right?
Yeah, how big is your
have
screen? Your
a-
touch screen? Yeah.
Yeah, 11-inch, 12-inch, 14. It's getting ridiculous now.
It is, yeah. I don't know if you've driven the Lexus IS recently, and it's been updated along the way.
Yeah.
It feels really outdated inside now because it doesn't have like digital screens everywhere like the same way.
I'm amazed at how fast a car feels outdated
Right.
these days.
Yeah, yeah.
You take a 2-year-old car and you think like, oh, it's all right. Then suddenly you get in and then
Right.
you see this like tiny screen with a huge bezel
Yeah.
around it, and I'm wondering how did we do with that? You know?
Exactly, right? So, you know, I think digital screens is a big hygiene factor. I mean, the IS is a great car. I really like driving it, but I can see why customers would feel it's outdated and it's not as current as, you know, something with a much bigger screen and much more digital stuff inside.
But I do miss analog dials.
Oh, yeah, totally.
The rev counter and the
Yeah.
speedometer.
Yeah.
You know, and I was okay for a while where they started to digitize part of it.
Right.
But you still had a physical needle
Yeah.
sweeping up and down. And now it's full digital.
Pretty much. Yeah. And not just fully digital, but you know how Audi at least does a representation of the needles?
Yeah.
You know, you look at the BMW nowadays, right? There's no actual round instruments
and,
anymore.
Yeah,
This
my
is-
eyes are hunting
Yeah.
all over for.
Yeah, I hate that stuff. But you know what? It's a good example, actually, of how the car companies actually, in a way, know better than we do. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does BMW get away with it? Like, the grills, like you said, the 7 Series is getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And then I've not heard a review or an article that says, hey, actually, I like how it looks. The
You
grills
know,
are
okay,
looking great,
I have
you
to
know.
say this. So I drove the i7,
Yeah.
and when I saw it in pictures, I was like, "What on earth?" It looks like Picasso drew the car. You know how
Yeah, right.
Picasso's
It's
got
all
one eyeball.
distorted and-
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, But when I saw it, it really does work. I have to say because it makes it look like you spent a shitload of money on your car.
Okay.
Which you
that
would-
Rolls Royce factor.
Exactly. Yeah, and that car is longer than a Flying Spur now, the 7 Series.
Wow.
And so it has to kind of look grand. And the German guy said, look, you know, you don't want to spend money on the 7 Series and have your neighbors think you bought a 5 Series. They can't really tell if you bought a 5 or a 7. If you do it like this, there's just no way they're going to, you know, they're going to mistake your 7 for a 5 Series.
I guess there are markets like China or
Yeah.
Middle East and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Probably Russia, but you know.
No, not anymore.
Not
But
anymore,
yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, and so who's right? And if you look at the sales numbers, I guess that's going to tell the final story.
But have they come to a point where they can do no wrong, basically, because it's a BMW, people will buy it regardless, or it could be a Mercedes, it could be any other, these sort of established brands, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember when the latest 3 Series came to town? I don't know if you drove it,
Yeah.
but it had M Sport suspension, and it was super, like, the ride was terrible.
I just felt like it didn't feel like a 3 Series. at
Yeah,
all.
and it
it's
felt
like a
like
big
the-
car, right?
Yeah. And it felt like they put bricks in the suspension instead
Right.
of springs.
Yeah.
And I think everyone actually gave it a bad review in Singapore.
Okay.
Yeah, and I remember they were not. They did come to me and say, you know, we really didn't like the car, huh?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I don't think it's just me. And you know, and sure enough, everyone sort of one by one just said, you know, this car just doesn't feel good to sit in and all that.
Yep.
And I think they had another round with a different press car and a different spec and all that. So you know, I don't think they do get away with everything. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think sooner or later, I think the market does find a way to reward and punish the car makers accordingly. Yeah, at least I like to think so. But you know, let's see how the 7 Series does. I think you know, I didn't like the car when I saw it in pictures, but
After driving it?
Well, driving is one thing, but I just can imagine like if it was my money and I wanted to kind of drop $600,000 on a car,
Yep.
I would want my neighbors to know about it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you might say that's a really shitty reason to buy a car or make a car decision.
Yeah.
But, maybe people at that level actually do make their decision that way. And I think that people who do want to be kind of fly under the radar a little bit more do have their options as well. So that's what I like. The car makers are starting to kind of do their own thing a bit more nowadays and let the market decide.
Okay. So i7 or EQS?
Thanks for putting me on the spot there. I like them both, but you know what? The short answer is if it were my money, I would probably go with i7. As a limousine, I think I really like the bling, the comfort, the space, and just the feeling of grandeur that you get from driving the car.
Okay.
The EQS is a lot more fun to drive, but it feels technologically different. It feels very streamlined and minimalist, and I like all that. But I think if that was what I was looking for, I'd probably go with an EQE.
EQE. Okay.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that one.
I haven't driven it either, but it's basically the same platform, but scaled down and everything.
Okay.
And so I would have all of that approach to electromobility, but in a smaller package, which I always like, right? And if I was going to go grand, i7 I think would be my choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went on this i7 trip. Did you get a chance to try the X7?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Okay. And in this climate now where everyone loves, you find more SUV fans than sedan fans.
Yeah.
I expect that X7 would be sort of on that contention list, right?
I think so. But if you drive the two cars back to back, they're actually very different. The X7 really does have a lot more space, of course.
Sure.
But the 7 Series is much more refined, and the experience is different. It's more opulent inside, even more opulent, I should say. And the suspension, it really just smashes the bumps under you flat, and you don't feel anything. You still can feel a little bit in an X7.
In the X7.
Yeah, of course the electric car is quieter, but so I drove a 760i and that was really, the engine is so remote, it's just, you're just sort of distantly aware that there is some kind of engine in front of you.
So what's under a 760i now? It's not a V12, right?
No, it's a V8, yeah.
V8 now.
Yeah.
Still nothing to sniff at. It's not like they put a 2-liter turbo 4-banger in there.
No. 554 horsepower. 544 horsepower, if I'm not wrong.
Shabby,
I think it's 4.2 seconds or something like that. That's a really quick car.
Gets the job done.
Gets the job done, and lots of bling to impress your neighbors. I think you've seen the 7 Series, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me put you on the spot now.
Okay.
Yeah, how would you describe it? Would you call the i7 an eyesore?
Now that you mention it, I think there are enough alternatives for me to spend my money elsewhere. Immediately I'm thinking, I think maybe something like the A8 would be more my speed.
I would go Audi S8, actually, if you were going there.
Okay, I haven't driven the S8 yet.
Oh, they have a press car. You should totally check it out.
Yeah, so how is the ride at low speed? Because, we spend a lot of time in traffic, on town and all that. So how is the S7 ride?
The S8?
S8, right.
Pretty good, actually. So that's the thing, right? Actually, it's not difficult to make a car fast and handle well.
Do everything, basically.
It's difficult to add the comfort back in, right? I think they've done it really well.
Yeah.
But, I've always had a soft spot for the S8, actually. The first time I ever drove...
See, you said it too. The S7, AS8.
Right.
We're talking about S8, yeah. Because the thing that's coming to my mind is the SQ7.
Oh, okay.
So we drove that recently to KL.
Right.
And we made a video of it and all that. And we thought, wow, this is hard to beat. It's so effortless.
Yeah.
Has that twin turbo V8 and
that's
stuff like that.
the Bentley engine, basically.
And then, and then the next week, I got into an A8.
Right.
And then it was, to me, another level because the S8, while it was fine and effortless on the high-speed stuff, around town, the ride did feel a bit busy, a little bit bumpy.
Right.
But this one, was effortless.
Yeah.
Everywhere, at every speed. Yeah.
Okay, so that's like the X7 and 7 Series kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
And see, that's the kind of thing that you could tell someone, right? If they were kind of in the market for both of these cars, you could ask them, like, how important like is ride comfort to you, for example, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you would be able to tell them the straight answer. Look, if it's that important, you should get the sedan, Yeah. So I used to puzzle about this, right? What gives me and you the right to criticize cars? We've never worked for a car company. We don't have engineering degrees. Our lap times are nothing special, right?
But I would say that we have driven a shitload of cars.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So, like someone who wants to buy a Ferrari, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't want to just buy a Ferrari. You need to find out, does he think
it
about
stack
going
up,
to the track? Or, does he just want to go to Zook? Does he want just a shitload of straight line like acceleration?
Yeah.
Then you'd be able to filter that for him and say, okay, SF90 or nothing because it's 1,000 horsepower. Or if you go to the track, okay, you want one of the mid-engine ones, 296 is a lot of fun, whatever it is, So I think you're right. We've driven a shitload of cars and we've paid attention. We haven't just like put pretty things on Instagram, right? We've paid attention. We've thought about what these cars are about and who they're for.
Yeah.
And I think that does give us at least some credibility in terms of helping people to make the right car decision.
That's right.
Yeah. And it's different from saying this car is good, this car is bad. It is about sort of trying to help people find the right car for them. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, So this part, I can leave it out if you're not comfortable with it, but I can leave it out. But
Sure.
I understand that you're sort of freelancing on the freelance trail now on your own. So, what led to that decision?
No, I mean, there's nothing, there's nothing weird going on here. So, I started Car Buyer as a magazine and then a website. I don't know, 18 years ago or something. And then I worked with Darren Wong, who was, kind of doing the editor stuff. And if the listeners don't know who Darren Wong is, just go to Car Buyer's YouTube page. He's the guy that kind of talks like this. He's got a goatee and he thinks he's, he thinks he's Jim Morrison, basically. And Darren, he does a great job.
Sure.
And,
Great guy.
Yeah, great guy. And, I think around about more than a year ago, actually, we talked about this. How I think it's time to make an orderly transition for him to step up to do a little bit more in terms of a publisher role.
Okay.
So he's responsible for profit and loss now. He's got an expanded role in terms of oversight over the entire team. He can hire and he can fire. And what I suffer from this lack of ambition, right? I just want to write about cars.
Yeah.
And that's what I told him. I said, look, I really want to just write about cars.
Yeah.
But I think you'd be great as a publisher.
Yeah.
And, he thought about it for a while and he's like, yeah. So, and I think he's really stepped up well to the role, actually. So we've been doing this as an kind of planned and orderly transition for a couple of months now. He's been slowly taking on more duties.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, let's draw a line in the sand. 1st November, I'm going to go full freelance.
Okay.
And that means I don't have a salary. You can contract with me to write the stories. And that's what we'll do. We'll just give you a menu of stories, like I do with all of the, I write about cars for the Business Times.
Okay.
It's the same way. I give them a menu of stories and they choose the ones they want.
Okay.
And that's really what I want to do. I mean, that's as ambitious as I get,
Okay.
And I think, I hope it's worked out. For Darren anyway. For me, we'll see. I'm going to run out of money in 6 months. I just know it. Well, maybe 8 months if I'm lucky, but let's see how it goes.
Okay. But I guess if you work without a net, then, you're going to have to up your game. And
Yeah,
that kind of
totally.
thing, right?
Yeah. So that's the thing about freelance writing, right? You give up income, you gain time.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's about finding that balance, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I wish you all the best.
Oh, thank you. Do you have any work for me? I mean, I could totally use it.
Yeah, I'm looking for work myself too. All right. Okay lah. Well, from me, I guess that's it for this episode, and I'll see you on the next one. AutoApp. It's a one-stop app that takes care of all your car needs. You just download the app, pick a service you want, and it's done. Don't just fix it, AutoApp it.